Okay, in today's conversation, we will look at Accenture's Technology Vision 2021. And we're going to discuss the biggest future technology trends and how they will impact business and your career. And to do this, I am joined by Paul Daugherty, Group Chief Executive Technology and Chief Technology Officer at Accenture. Welcome, Paul.
It's great to be here, Bernard. Really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, same here, same here. Where are you joining us from today?
I live in New Jersey, just outside of New York City. That's kind of a cold day here. And in the normal world, I'd be traveling almost all of my time, bouncing around different spots in the world. But as we all know, the last year has been different.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So in your role, you lead all aspects of Accenture's technology business, and you're responsible for Accenture's technology strategy, driving innovation through R&D in Accenture Labs, and leveraging emerging technologies to bring the newest innovations to
Right.
clients globally. You're also the co-author of a book that I really enjoyed, which is called Human Plus Machine, Reimagining Work in the Age of AI. And as you said, I'm super excited to talk about this. So Accenture has been developing its technology visions now for the last 21 years to identify what companies and their people need to address over the next 3 or so years to accelerate and master change. And the past year has been different to anything we've ever experienced before. So what has been the impact of the global pandemic on technology that you are seeing?
Yeah, no, it's just interesting. Like you said, we've been doing these forecasts for 21 years, and I'll maybe talk about that a little bit more as we go through it. But whenever you whenever we do this, and I can talk about the process, but if this isn't just spend a couple weeks, come up with some ideas and trends. We work on this throughout the year. We have an external advisory board. It's people from all over that we really respect that help us do this every year, in addition to our own researchers. But one of the really important things when we look at the vision is to think about the context in the world around us and what's happening. And that's why this year has been such a interesting process, to go through and even think about the future and think about the vision, because the present is so dramatically different. And if I step back and think about the past year, I think the way I think about it is what happened is we had a tremendous amount of changes. It wasn't just COVID. We had COVID. We had Brexit happening at last year. We had these catastrophic wildfires in Australia and California. Concerns about the planet and global warming. We had concerns about systemic social injustice and racism. We had political chasms at a level we've never had before. You put all that together, and it spells out volatility and uncertainty at a new level. And I think what that's done, and COVID is probably the biggest factor in there, is it's hit a giant fast forward button to the future. It's compressed a lot of change that might have played out for us as human beings over a decade into 1 or 2 years. And so we're living in the future. We're in a future reality now, but we really all haven't caught up, and businesses I don't think have caught up to understanding how different the current reality is from where we were just a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Fast forward, I think, is someone pressed the acceleration button on innovation is definitely one of those things. So in your tech vision, you describe the four realities we are now facing. What are those realities?
Yeah, well, I just mentioned one thing before I get to the realities, which is the fact that this impacts how businesses think about these new realities. Is that before COVID, we had a gap. We call it the digital achievement gap. Our research shows that the top 10% of digital leaders outperform the rest by 2 to 3 times. This is before COVID. Top 10% outperforming the rest by 2 to 3x. We just redid that research, after COVID, and what happened is that gap is widened to 5x. The digital leaders, those that were better at digital, generally better at using and adapting technology, widened their gap over the rest to 5x now. And that's really a stark realization for leaders. And I think so many businesses I talk to have kind of realized this, that they just hadn't made the progress they needed to and digital and adaptation to technology. And technology was the lifeline, that allowed companies to continue during COVID. And so that's maybe the backdrop for these new realities. And there's four things that I talk about that shape these new realities. The first is a new reality in human experience. Billions of people instantaneously changed their behavior almost overnight as a result of COVID and what was happening. Never before happened. Ice ages and things like that radically changed us played out over a long period of time. Prior epidemics, prior financial crashes, what have you, didn't have the impact that COVID had. Never before have people changed as rapidly as they did. And we see it in so many ways. 350-fold increase in telehealth visits, online grocery shopping doubling almost overnight, and a variety of other things. People really fundamentally operating differently. I'm Zooming and teaming and hanging out, whatever your platform is, WebExing with in-laws and relatives and friends. So the human experience has dramatically changed. That's one new reality. The second is technology, just the realization and the new reality that every business is a technology business. And we can talk more about that, but I think that's just a simple facts, that we get into in our vision. The third new reality is around the new future of work. More of a hybrid work style, where work is time and location independent, driven by metadata, highly automated and more human-centric. And then the fourth new reality has surprised some people, but it's sustainability. And I don't think you can separate all these other changes, these new realities, from the need to drive sustainability more into the core of the business. And we, part of our research identified that that this link between technology and sustainability, and those that kind of focus on both, we call them the twin engines. Those that focus on both are 2.5 more times likely to succeed. So sustainability needs to be part of the formula as you address these other challenges going forward.
Yeah, I was very happy to see sustainability as part of the new realities, because this is something that is becoming increasingly important in lots of the work that I'm doing, right, where organizations actually realize technology is a huge enabler to help us to create a better world, and also tech companies have an important role to play, and technology has an important role to play. So let's look at the 2021 tech vision in a bit more detail. How is this vision different, and can you outline some of the key trends that you are seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we develop it a lot differently for a purpose. I read every tech forecast and tech vision that's out there. I have hundreds of them saved and go back and look at them, and they tend to look very similar. It's a listing of the top 10 things. It's cloud and AI and virtual reality, in whatever order, and and I don't think that helps business leaders a whole lot, because those things are important. Is what do you do with them? So the vision and the way we put together the trends is a little different. We're trying to look at how combinations of technology impact business in different ways. So I'll share the trends in a minute, but you won't see like cloud as a trend. You'll see some other things that we think are different ways to think about the technology. The title of the vision, though, is leaders wanted. Leaders wanted, masters of change at a moment of truth. And so you have to it takes a bit to unpack that mentally, but think masters of change at a moment of truth. We really do believe this is a moment of truth for leaders around technology. And it's around this idea that every business is a digital business, and you need to think about experience and a number of these things differently going forward. I'm continually surprised by the number of CEO board level meetings that I have on technology and details of technologies, not just CIOs and CTOs, because technology is so integral to the strategy. And that's what we mean by leaders wanted in these, this moment of truth we're in. And masters of change speaks to the fact that technology used to be thought of as more of a means to an outcome. You built your billing system, as long as the bills got out, you were fine. Whatever, you use whatever analogy. I think we're at a different moment with technology, where technology itself is the platform for change in the enterprise, because technology is the foundation. Foundation of the business. We said in 2013, our vision title in 2013 was every business is a digital business. And that was kind of a seminal vision. And we were one of the first, I think the first to say it. And I spent a lot of that year defending it. People said, no, that's wrong. You're crazy. Digital isn't part of my business. And it became reality. I think this vision is a little bit similar, where it's saying that technology is integral to every business, and technology moves from being the if using a concert analogy, technology was the roadie before. It was setting up the show, making sure it went well, sitting off the stage while while something else was center stage. I think technology is moving to be the star on center stage rather than just the roadie, and that's dramatically different for business. So that's the backdrop of it. I can talk about the some of the trends if that's helpful to get into some of the
That would be good. Before we do this, I just want to have a quick look through the stream because people are saying hello. And we have people joining from all over the world. We've got Mahjong from India. We've got Daryl from Kent in the UK. We've got someone from Portugal, from Richmond in the US, from St. Louis, from Lisbon in Portugal. We have someone from Brazil joining. We've got Amber from Australia. We've got Shazad from Pakistan. Someone from Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Shilam from Morocco. So it's great to see everyone joining in, saying hello. As always, we try to make this as interactive as possible. So say hello, but also ask questions and comment and share your views on what we are talking about, because this is what these live streams are all about. It's about engaging with you and hearing your voices too.
That's great.
Paul, what are some of the I think you identified 5 key technology trends. Maybe you can outline them in a bit more detail.
Yeah, I'll do that. And it's just great to see the audience around the world. That would probably look like mine and maybe your travel schedule, Bernard. You're going around those places in a normal time. It's great to be able to connect and talk to people in this environment. I hope we can hear some of their questions. There's 5 trends. I'll go through them kind of quickly and just paint the picture. Then we can dive in where there's more interest. The first one is called stack strategically. And this is talking about the technology stack and why it's becomes more strategic. And we talk about architecting a better future. And we're making the point that architecture matters. Architects, I think, are very scarce commodities, by the way, and become kind of heroes, I think, in the organization going forward in terms of understanding how to architect this future going forward. And it's about, the technology architecture and the business architecture coming together. So how you architect matters. It's not just about, the outcome you drive. So how do you get to cloud? And then move and then expand to the edge? How do you leverage data and AI properly? How do you create a real experience layer to capitalize on what I talked about earlier, which is we don't yet understand the new experience. So we need to kind of think about experience and enable change and experience very differently. And then security, which we can get into, which is a big part of how you secure and avoid threats and risk in the environment. I think a great example of this one is Starbucks. If you look at what they did over the last year. So Starbucks is one of those ones who widened the gap. There was just an interview with their CEO who talked about what they did during COVID and how they, is it an opportunity in a lot of ways. So what did they do? They had their mobile app. They developed new capabilities in their mobile app. They pushed it out to millions of people. They went almost immediately to 90% remote ordering with in-store pickup. They used microservices and APIs and the architecture that they had developed to form new partnerships such as Uber Eats to enable new modes of delivery to consumers, and thereby created new experiences powered by technology. And you could ask kind of, given how they operate, is that a technology company or is that a coffee company, a retail company? I'm not sure it matters, but it shows how the two are really integrally linked together.
Yeah, great example.
Yeah.
What's your feeling? How well are people? If you look at the global set of organizations, how well are they creating the strategic stack, and how well are they re-platforming at the moment?
It's a great question. I think the obvious. There's 2 obvious challenges in this. One is the legacy debt and the legacy that companies are dealing with, and the fact that you can't start with a clean sheet of paper. So I think that's one point. But we talk in the vision, we talk in a lot of the work we do with clients about how do you get away from that? How do you do digital decoupling? How do you create technology wealth? How do you create technology wealth actually using techniques that actually can create a surplus of change capacity for you going forward? And I think those are important things to think about. The other challenge for a lot of organizations, and this was why I think it does become a CEO and C-suite level issue, not just the CIO, is governance becomes really important, because to drive the stack strategically, you need the CIO and CTO need the whole C-suite engaged and supportive and aligned on what that means, that the right decisions are continually taken. I see a lot of organizations where the CIO and the teams laid out the right strategic view going forward, but it's hard to get everybody aligned. It's hard to get the investments aligned behind it. And what we're seeing is in many organizations, the CEO, stepping and playing that role to understand the strategic technology direction, provide the support around the technology direction, and get the governance aligned across the company.
Very good, very good. Let's move to the second technology trend that you're seeing.
Yeah, this is a fun one. The mirrored world is what we call it, and it's talking about. This is something I know you've looked at a lot too. It's the power of massive, intelligent digital twins. And what's different, digital twins have been in our vision for at least 5 years in some form. So it's not that this is brand new, but they're moving from simulation to operation, and companies are dramatically increasing their investment. And some of it is because of what happened with COVID. You couldn't get people to the manufacturing facilities. Things like remote inspection of plants using augmented reality from your home, from the other side of the world, became reality and a necessity overnight, led to different ways of thinking about the operations. So, and the investment in digital twins is, taking off from 3 billion last year. It'll be 35 billion in a couple of years. So tenfold increase in a few years of companies' investments in digital twins. An example is we talk about in the vision is Unilever, who used digital twins in one of their plants to dramatically improve the operating productivity and energy utilization and save millions of dollars a day, in a facility. It's just through one example. Philips is using these in health, digital twins of a person to monitor, to actually prepare for surgical procedures and better diagnose what's happening. The NFL, the National Football League in the U.S., American football in this case, is using digital twins of athletes and team performance to kind of simulate how things work. Retailers are using digital twins in different areas of operation. So the reason I go through this is it's this progression. The city Singapore is interesting. The city of Singapore has created networks of digital twins in terms of how they monitor and operate the city more effectively and serve the citizens of Singapore more effectively. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about with the digital twins.
Very good, fascinating. What other trends are you seeing?
Yeah, the next one is I guess what I like, which is called iTechnologist. So iTechnologist, and it's talking about the democratization of technologies. This is about citizen developer, but moving beyond citizen developer to citizen analyst. So how do you enable more of a democratization of the capability where everybody becomes a technologist? If every company is a technology company, then I think a corollary becomes every person in the company needs to support and drive and use the technology in some way. So this is on the technology side. This is talking about the citizen developer growth that's happening with low code, no code, and other types of tools. Power Platform for Microsoft, Honeycode on Amazon, Pega, Mendix. There's lots of technologies for this. And how do you enable people to give more flexibility and view the CIO's job as creating some of the foundation and capability, and then the platform for which people to again develop apps and new capability in minutes. And then there's many organizations we're working with that are taking this in an interesting direction with data. How do you create citizen data analysts and citizen data stewards and create data platforms to allow the business to operate rapidly? There's one automotive company we're working with that's doing this across tens of thousands of business users with a very structured academy and training process to enable that level of data utilization in a very different way across their business. So this is the trend we're seeing here. I think there's some challenges here. How do you avoid the sprawl that's happened in the past when you've had a lot of shadow IT? So you have to do this in a structured way, which is why some of the new technologies are helpful for this and the governance capabilities they have. You have to think about security, both the data security and privacy, make sure the data is used appropriately, as well as new risks you could introduce with securities. And that's why this isn't just enabling and throwing a lot of the technology out there. It comes back to building this into the way you stack strategically and create the technology stack to address this in the right way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think one of the pitfalls I see lots of organizations fall into is that they give people the ability to use technology, they give people the ability to use data, but they don't put the supporting mechanism in place to actually upskill people, to give them the competencies to actually use this technology well, and where they don't have the governance in place to make sure that we're actually all driving towards the same goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, and we'll probably talk about that more as we go. But I think that training and enablement is critical. So we see these citizen developers, citizen analyst programs. It has to come with a lot of, to your point, a lot of the training around it as well.
And then I guess this is linked to the next trend, anywhere,
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah, anywhere and everywhere. It's bring your own environment. So we kind of cleverly named it that, I guess. And bring your own device is what you think of. Typically, we're talking about bring your own environment, which is thinking about the full context of how somebody works in this remote environment, which is not just temporary, but kind of a permanent feature of the landscape going forward. So this is talking about the culture of how do you work differently. It's talking about how do you construct the processes differently, and new security considerations. Moving to zero trust security environments, which are important, even more important in this world where endpoints are sprawling all over the place. And also, the other thing that we get into is the new modes of work. So, what is the work environment? And I mentioned the augmented reality example earlier. I've got this is virtual reality, not augmented, but this is my Oculus headset that I'm using for a meeting later. Um, where we're going to bring people together from around the world, and we're going to tour some physical facilities that we have in France and some other places. So how do you create these different environments for people to work in that are more effective in leveraging technologies that can work in a different way? And that's the collection of things we're talking about. Talking about there, and how do you enable it? I think the other interesting thing is how do you enable these environments quickly, and that's where technology is allowing us to do new things rapidly. One of the programs we did last March, a year ago, right after COVID, was we worked with the National Health Service in the UK with the NHS Digital organization to rapidly enable that organization to go with a digital workplace. It was Teams in their case, rolled out to over a million of the employees and medical professionals affiliated with NHS in a week, roughly a week. The ability to deploy that kind of technology at scale, and obviously you need to do the training and everything we talked about a minute ago, is really phenomenal. And we saw that with many organizations. And so deploying these environments more rapidly becomes important too.
Yeah, and for me, one of the biggest challenges organizations are facing is how do they create this right hybrid environment? Because at
Yeah.
the moment we are all digital, we're all remote, and this seems to be working at the moment. How does this then change when we have some people in the office? They might be in a meeting room, people zooming in, VR and AI is not quite there yet. So I think this is definitely a big challenge for organizations.
Yeah, and I think our approach and what we're doing is designing everything to be virtual. So because we've proven everything we do can be done virtually. We don't believe that's the future, because there's a lot of good reasons not to do everything virtual. But we'll design the work to be virtual so that the people will come together when it's really valuable to do so, rather than because they have to get the people in the room to do so. And that's impacting the way we think about our workspaces. It's impacting the way we think about work, and getting together becomes something that adds value, something that people can do a little bit more on their own terms. And I think that's going to be a much brighter future of work for people. And it's certainly not everybody working at home all the time, because I think we're human beings, and human beings need to work together. We need to build corporate cultures, and you need to build trust and relationships. And some of that can be done digitally, but there's a much higher overhead to do that digitally. And we'll as we get back to the hybrid work environment, blending the two will become very important.
I agree. And there was one other final trend you identified.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It'd be great to get your feedback, and then any feedback from the audience on this too. It's called "From Me to We," a multi-party systems path through chaos. Uh, and it's a long title, but it's talking about multi-party systems, the emerging label for blockchain, distributed ledger, and other ways of building systems across an ecosystem of companies. And if you think about the challenges that we face, the big challenges that we faced before COVID, and even more brought on since COVID, it's challenges that need to be solved by many companies coming together. The old way of doing that, with companies building their own systems with very high transaction costs and friction and inertia between companies just doesn't work for a lot of the problems we need to solve. And looking at distributed ledger and other technologies that reduce the transaction costs for cross-company connections, I think is essential. It's just this, it's the smart way of building a lot of things going forward, and we're seeing dramatic increase in that. Some examples of this are work we've done, that Accenture's done with the World Economic Forum, KLM, Air France, Canada, and some countries in Europe to look at something called KDTI, the Known Digital Traveler Identity Initiative, using a blockchain-based identity to dramatically streamline everything that needs to happen for passenger pre-clearance, customs clearance, et cetera. So you can literally just kind of walk from one country, onto the airplane, land in another country, and have it all be seamless. That's an example. Not to pick on Singapore again, but Singapore had their digital health passport powered by a blockchain solution that helped them in their response to the COVID environment. One of the really interesting things here with multi-party systems then is the connection between all of this and sustainability. And one of the interesting things we're seeing now is these it's a lot of people calling the farm to fork solutions. We're working in one which is think about organic coffee growing. So how do you know that the beans were picked, were grown in a sustainable farm in whatever country? Let's say it's in Brazil, since somebody from Brazil was joining your audience. Coffee beans were picked in Brazil. Were they done on a sustainable farm that didn't involve rainforest clearing and grown in a sustainable way? Are they certified organic? And then at the very end, when I'm buying that cup of coffee in Starbucks, how do I know? And having a ledger-based system, a distributed ledger with traceability and transparency throughout that process, and transaction capability, so that if I want to pay 5 extra cents and tip the farmer that incent the right behavior, how do I flow that money directly back to that person through the chain? Tremendously powerful, and that kind of technology is being deployed and working in cases. And as they think about the health consequences and certifying the health, certifying the attesting to the origin of pharmaceutical products and things like that, tremendous power of this technology. And again, this has been talked about for a while, but I think we have the impetus to deploy these more at scale. The performance and the technology has matured, and we're really seeing this take off as we go forward.
Yeah, I like this. I like this trend. For me, the challenge with using digital ledgers and blockchain technology for some of this, especially when you talk about sustainability, is the environmental impact of some of those solutions. So I don't think we haven't quite figured out yet. But I agree.
Yeah. When you think, and that's what's interesting about these is there's this debate now about the NFTs, the non-fungible tokens used for the famous $69 million painting that sold as an NFT recently, and the blockchain's at $60,000, I think, right now. I'm sorry, Bitcoin is at $60,000 right now. So there's the debate about the environmental impact of those technologies. I think Bitcoin has more emissions than Denmark or something like that, from what I last saw. But I think these other technologies are little. They're not mining-based technologies. They don't have that environmental impact, and they have a great environmental positive consequence if we deploy them properly.
Yeah, I agree. The other area that I think falls under this umbrella possibly is this whole idea of co-opetition. So different, basically, organizations that used to compete against each other are now forming alliances to, I see this in the automotive industry, for example, where they're now working together to develop new electric motors, where they're creating new mobility solutions, companies that would traditionally see themselves as competitors.
Yeah, no, we see that in a lot of industries. Automotive is a good one. Is one where we definitely see that. I think there's opportunities. It's a co-opetition, as you said. They're going to compete on certain things, but there's an opportunity to collaborate around parts of it, and to collaborate in a trusted manner. That's where the distributed ledger technologies come in terms of a way where you can understand the data without necessarily sharing all the secrets. And new techniques like homomorphic encryption and things like that are enabling even new capabilities where you can do analysis on a set of data, but maybe not access the data itself. And that again creates more trusted means to collaborate and interact across companies.
Very good. So these are fascinating trends. They're relevant to every single organizations. So what do these trends then mean for business leaders? How do they use these trends and turn them into tangible strategies in their business?
Yeah, well, I think that it comes back to I think the role of leaders itself, maybe, and thinking about the role of leaders, and I think the one of the things going forward in this leaders wanted moment of truth point is speaking to the fact that you know one of the roles of leaders, it needs to be to embrace the technology, and I think the role of the CIO and CDO is to make sure that is to evangelize and make sure that the organization understands the technology. So I think it can't be if every business is a technology business, and I strongly believe that's true, then every leader needs to understand that. I think the role in some organizations, the role of the CIO and CDO will be to educate and bring along the rest of the organization. In other cases, it'll be to participate as part of the team. And we're increasingly seeing things like in board searches for companies that technology skills being valued to bring that to the table.
Mm.
CEOs, rising who have that kind of tech, who have at least some of that technology background, who are diving in and educating themselves on technology. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think uh, the the secret is that the business technology and the business strategy and the technology strategy need to be one and the same and linked together. And that's really the path forward to the future. And as I said earlier, the governance needs to be carefully thought of so that the investments lead you to the right outcome you want, which has been a particularly problematic issue for IT in the past.
Very good. Do you have some, you mentioned a few examples already, but do you have some best in class examples of organizations that have really embraced these tech trends and delivered some real business benefits?
Yeah, I think, I mean, one that's really topical is since we're talking about vaccines, is and viruses, is Moderna. I think they're an interesting case study themselves in terms of what they've done and how they've used technology. If you think about all these trends and stack strategically in particular, Moderna, so they innovated at unprecedented you know pace to come up with a vaccine very quickly using a whole new science around messenger RNA. So how did they do that? They had their drug design studio powered by the cloud, powered by public cloud, Amazon in their case, and they had powerful AI algorithms, convolutional neural networks, and others that were rapidly iterating on massive data sets and providing scientists with information in kind of a human plus machine model to rapidly iterate and find the solutions. I think that's a great example of how the technology really made a difference in the way it was integrated with the business itself. In this case, a very science-based business to drive to new outcomes and solutions. And if you look at the BioNTech, who's the other one that was in there with Pfizer and innovated very quickly. We have very similar type of approach, and a kind of very different approach to innovating in that area.
Very good. So what do you see as some of the biggest barriers that stop organizations embracing these tech trends and transform their organization with technology?
Yeah, I think um, some of the things we talked about already. So the legacy debt is a big issue for organizations. How do we, someone might, you might be in an organization, a big company, mainframe based technology, legacy systems that were developed 30 years ago or something. And how do you, in that environment, how do you fast forward to, yourself to the future? So that's one key constraint. And again, as I mentioned briefly earlier, I think we see ways to manage through that. There's no silver bullet for them to make it easy, but I think there's ways to manage through that. The governance is a big issue. I've mentioned that a couple of times. I won't go into it any further. Data becomes a big issue for companies. If you look underneath each of the trends we talk about in here, data is a consistent sub theme, and it's about the data quality. Getting the right data quality. It's about getting the right access to data. There's a big barrier in many organizations. This is something that's part of almost every discussion I have currently, is the governance around the data specifically. If I ask in most organizations, well, who owns the data? Um, there's not agreement, and I think organizations that address that are moving forward more quickly. And because you need to understand data and data ownership, and in how you're creating the data transformation that you need in the business. So that's a really tough issue that a number of organizations are dealing with, in addition to the privacy and all the other challenges around managing data today. And I think the other thing is this where is this world we're moving into. I think the experience is a challenge. I talked about the new reality of experience. I don't think we yet know like how far the human experience has shifted, and how different expectations are going to be going forward. And I think a challenge is for many organizations. I was just talking to a large company about this last night. Is they know that they need to transform their technology and really create a different experience for their consumer. But what does that mean? You can do the design thinking, and we do a lot of this work with clients through our Accenture Interactive team. Design thinking, envision the new experiences, et cetera. But how do you lay the foundation to really continue to adapt and change and create the new experiences your customers need? And I think that's another area that that companies need to invest in.
Yeah, I agree. You talked about data governance and ownership as an important enabler for all of this. Do you have any examples or any best practices that organizations, how they've tackled this, and how they've created a clarity around ownership and data governance?
Yeah, without naming names on this one, I think the organizations that are doing well, they've clarified the data governance issue, and which is particularly important in consumer businesses where you have multiple different product lines. So think about an insurance business where you have different products, or a a telco, wireless company where you have maybe a B2B and a B2C business, and these types of organizations, it's really important to clarify, because the organization, the goal is typically integrating the data and leveraging it for greater value across the organization. That's the goal of almost every company in that situation. But the getting it right is tough. So getting that alignment is critical. And then the other thing is relates to cloud and how companies are viewing cloud. I think too many companies are viewing their migration to the cloud and the applications separately from data. So a lot of companies we talk to, they have somebody driving a data transformation initiative, they have somebody else driving a cloud initiative. And in my experience, that doesn't work well, because the two are conjoined together. You need to have an aligned data strategy and cloud strategy. Where your apps are going to end up and how you're going to containerize and modernize and innovate on them is integrally linked to the data access you have. And so that's, in terms of best practices, I would say I unfortunately see more companies getting that wrong still than right. And that's an area where we're trying to do a lot of work in helping our clients really see, get that aligned, especially as you move into hyperscaler platforms and choosing platforms and such, doing that in a very aligned way. Not necessarily pick the same platform for everything, but understand the implications of the choices and making the decisions in a coordinated way is really important.
Very good. So we talked about what it means for businesses. What does it mean for people? How will technology redefine what it means to be human in the future?
Yeah, I mean, this is my favorite topics. We could spend a whole nother 45 minutes on this. I know it's something you're deeply you're deeply experienced in as well. It has real big implications for people, and we've got a lot of work to do on how it impacts people. I mean, I think there's three big implications. It's it's the reimagining of work, how we think about work differently, and us thinking about the role that people play. There's something we talked about in the book we wrote, that Jim Wilson and I wrote, called The Missing Middle, which is thinking about the characteristics of new jobs and how we prepare people for them. And I don't think we've invested enough in that, kind of as a society, economy, countries, whatever. So I think we need to think about how we prepare people for these new jobs that are changing rapidly, and that gets to kind of the reskilling question. So there's a lot of work to do for it. I think that the message for individuals is we're in an area where you need to be a learner, and you need to build out your learning architecture. You need to learn how to learn fast, because the jobs are changing quickly. And there's our view from all the research we've done. We have a lot of data around this. Is there's going to be enough jobs. But the jobs are going to change rapidly. So how do we make sure we're continually preparing people for jobs, and that we're doing that in a very inclusive way? So I think inclusive reskilling really becomes a key focus. That's why, just as a quick side note, with the book that we wrote, we donated all the proceeds to reskilling charities for that reason, and it's been really gratifying to see the work that organizations are doing. Like, there's a new X Prize now on looking at ways to reskill people and a variety of other things that are super interesting. So I think I know that there's a silver bar there, Bernard, but I think businesses, I'm encouraged that more businesses really get this. Learning and reskilling is at the core of what we do, both for ourselves and in the way we think about work with our clients. And we're not the only ones. Many organizations have are taking the right view on this. So we need to get more and make sure leaders and companies are thinking about reskilling of their own people. And we need to engage in our communities to make sure we're doing this to provide equal access to technology. The reality is, Tim Berners-Lee just put out some research on this from the World Wide Web Foundation. 2.3 billion youth in the world don't have internet access, don't have sufficient internet access today. So that's 2.3 billion people. That's 2.3 billion, almost 25% of the people in the world, that aren't prepared, aren't going to have a great place in the future unless we address that. And that plays out on a smaller scale to some degree in every country around the world. So that's the digital access question is important. That's why we believe, if the future is about innovation, we believe that quality equals innovation, and you can't get to you can't be an innovative company unless you have an inclusive workforce and you have a real view about equality on it. That's why we've got our 50-50 pledge by 2025 to be 50-50 gender diverse, and we're doing a lot of work around underrepresented minorities. We've launched our Black Founders Development Fund to focus on Black founders that don't have access to capital and resources, et cetera. And I think we all need to look at what we can do across these fronts to bring about this view of the future. I think the world's going to change more in the next 5 years than it did in the last 20. And I'm not, lots of people say things like that, so it's not a unique statement, but I really believe it's true. And if we don't have an inclusive set of inclusive workforce designing and bringing that world to life, we're going to have problems because it's not going to represent the needs of all. And that's why, this need for an inclusive approach is it's critical, for our future. It's critical for business success, and it's the right path to innovation.
100% agree. So anyone listening to this now and thinking, okay, what does it mean for me? What do I need to do as an individual to get ready for this? How do I look at my job and discover where to focus on? What are the kind of skills that people should focus on? Have you got any good advice for individuals?
Yeah, I think I think there's three things maybe that I'd focus on. I think or three things that are important, and can talk about how you develop these skills. But one is empathy. I think is a really important skills for people and leaders in this environment because empathy builds trust, and trust is a real critical agreement, especially if we're working more digitally and we're working in different ways. That the trust becomes really critical as we deploy technology that's really changing people's futures. The trust and empathy and understanding how it impacts them is really important. I think a real key attribute of people to be successful, leaders to be successful, is really thinking deeply about empathy. And I think a side effect maybe that's positive of this crazy environment of work from home is, I hope that as individuals we've developed more empathy for each other, because we see into people's home. I see where my coworker has a child that he or she has a child they're dealing with that's crawling on their chair as they're doing the call, and you can directly see the challenge they're dealing with. The window into each other's lives, I'm hoping, to provide us all a little bit more empathy that stays with us for a long time and permanently changes the way we operate. But I'd ask everybody to think about that, or suggest that everybody think about that. The second is this technology point. We have a program in Accenture now called TQ, Technology Quotient. It's for our whole business, not just for our technologists, to raise everybody's technology knowledge. And I think everybody understanding their technology quotient is critical, because technology is critical to everything you do. You don't need to be a programmer necessarily or an AI expert, but everybody, whether you're in technology or not, you need to understand a certain amount about technology to be successful. So think about your TQ, and that'll lead to your ability to innovate and be an innovator. And then the third thing is change. Think about how you change continually, which gets into your own learning platforms, as well as being a driver of change and somebody who understands how to affect change in the organization, because that's ultimately what's going to drive the success. So, kind of empathy, technology, and change, I think, are the three things that I'd focus on. And our research for the book and the research we've subsequently done in Accenture shows that, it's not about making everybody a technologist. It's about focusing on both the human skills and the technology skills that'll lead to success for people.
Yeah, I love this, and this is I again couldn't agree more. This is the advice I give people is to actually focus in terms of skills, focus on the ones that machines can't do well.
Yeah, right, right.
And focus on emotional intelligence, focus on creativity, on critical thinking, on all of these amazing skills that actually make us human. At the same time, really understand technology and understand the massive wave of innovation that is happening. And I like the way you talk about your five technology trends in your vision, because they bring together all of these different technologies that we have, from gene editing to 5G to AI to all of these that will completely transform our world, and they will interact
Yeah.
and and obviously accelerate transformation. I sometimes think, will there be a fifth industrial revolution? And sometimes I'm not quite sure, because I think we'll just see a continuous acceleration of innovation. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a great topic, and we should talk every year to see see how it changes and what happens. I think just one thing I think I've been thinking about is think about what happened when 4G and the smartphone came about. It was roughly, iPhone came out in 2007, 4G came out a year or two later, and think about that time. For those of you, I mean, I think everybody in the call probably lived through that time. And what happened as that was coming together? Facebook went mobile, Airbnb took off, Uber took off, Instagram, et cetera. It was really 4G and so a new human experience on the smartphone, and a technology that provided access came together. And then we had payment infrastructure, all sorts of things around that. We had the app store, all sorts of other dynamics and business models. But it was those two fundamental things. And I think that created the app economy that we've been largely living in since then, and both positively and the negative consequences of it that we're talking about now. I think we're in a world where the next thing's being created, but we don't see it yet, which is 5G plus a new set of experience technologies. It's not just headset-based VR and such, but it's a new set of experience technologies all around this, gesture and touch, and all sorts of different things. It's the edge devices that can sense and know things about us. I think we're creating the next. I think we're probably in the gestational stage of the next set of leaders that'll just either displace or complement some of the players from that last generation. So I don't know that whether that's the fifth industrial revolution or an extension of the fourth, but I think there's or right now a lot of companies gestating, and we're going to see in a few years some things pop out that I think are going to surprise us around new business models and whole new ways of using technology by combining the much broader different access of 5G with a new set of experience technologies that some entrepreneurs will really figure out in a profound fashion.
Very good. So we talked about some of the trends that are very relevant to every organization now over the next 3 years or so. Beyond that, or even across some of those things that we talked about so far, what are some of the technologies that are really that you get excited about at the
Yeah,
moment?
no, I love this question because I think about this like a lot daily. I get asked about it a lot by our Accenture teams, by our clients, by our investors. Like, what's the next wave is always the question, because we've been defined by waves. I started off punch cards, mainframe coding, then we had relational databases, which was like a big deal, and client server systems, the ERP wave, mobility, cloud computing, data and AI. Like, it's been waves that have defined as cloud. I I I don't see a wave in the same way, which is maybe where your comment's coming, Bernard, about, is there a fifth
Mm.
revolution or is it the continuation of this? There's so much latent value and potential in two things, cloud and AI in particular, that I think the next decade is going to be defined by us getting those right. I mean, we're roughly 20% in the cloud. We've said publicly we think that's going to shift to 80% in 3 to 5 years, and we see it happening. We're on track for, based on the prediction we made there. That's not just like migrating workloads and infrastructure working different. That's businesses driving them, running differently in the cloud. And then AI, we're just sorting out like how to apply AI. We've been obsessed with machine learning and big data-based approaches. We really believe that symbolic AI and other techniques are going to really fuel a whole new wave of innovation around AI. So I don't know. So I get really excited about those things, obviously, as you can tell from my reaction. But I'm also really intrigued by quantum. IonQ just went public through a SPAC. Really super interesting hardware approach that they've got, room temperature hardware for quantum. So I think there could be advances there that are super interesting as well. I think maybe the one thing that I'm really trying to spend a lot of time with is just understanding this edge, which gets back to this 5G plus new experience point I made earlier. This could be a super interesting application around the edge and processing at the edge that are going to be really important to watch too.
Yeah, this is what I'm excited about, this whole untethering of devices.
Yeah,
You showed your VR headset. I've got mine over there, but we still need Wi-Fi to make them work. In the future,
right.
hopefully we'll have um, glasses that don't look like VR headsets that we can then really use anywhere. That is something I get excited about.
Yeah,
And I get super excited about this intersection between technologies like artificial intelligence and synthetic biology as well.
yeah.
And the intersection, or the bringing technology to solve some of the environmental and sustainability problems. I think these are areas I get super excited about.
Yeah, I think that's really super interesting. And just a quick point on that, I agree. And we're starting some research. We expanded some of our research direction in our labs, our R&D labs around the world on that. I think the areas we're particularly interested in are synthetic biology, chemistry, and material science. It seems that there's a lot of potential, and there's others, but those in particular, there's a lot of opportunity for the traditional IT technologies to combine with the science and just do amazing things like the Moderna, example we talked about, and so and again, it's sustainability and other big implications for some of the challenges we face on the planet.
Very good. Any final tips, or anyone listen to us today? What do you see as some of the key takeaways for everyone?
There's three things. Then I'll make a final point. But the three things I'd say, there's three words I would summarize it up in: technology, talent, and trust. Technology. I think we really need to understand tech. Everybody needs to understand technology and where it's going. You need to think about technology. Talent is critical in this, in spreading it throughout your organization, personalizing it to yourself and your own talent and what you're doing. And trust, I think we just need to keep thinking about trust. We've been saying it for a couple of years, but trust will be a differentiator. The companies that create better experiences that their consumers or business partners trust will have better data and better connections and everything else to drive their business differently. So using technology in a way that it engenders trust is critical. So technology, talent, and trust are the three things I'd wrap up on. And my final point would be, next time I'd like to flip the table and ask you the questions, because I'd love to get into more depth on all the great stuff you're doing too, Bernard.
No, I would be super happy to do this more regularly. There's so many things. Each of the topics we touched on, we could spend an hour talking about. So this is all super exciting. Anyone who wants to find out more about the Accenture Technology Vision 2021, where do they go?
Just go to Accenture.com. If you do Accenture.com, or if you search Accenture Tech Vision, you'll see it there. My Twitter handle is on the screen in front of you, in front of people there, and you can see number of tweets and other things from me on it as well. So lots of ways to find the info.
Very good. Wonderful, Paul. Thank you so much for today. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. As always, let us know what you think of the session. Add your comments, questions. I will try to answer them. I will send Paul a link as well if he wants to answer any of them. As always, if you want to re-listen to any of those conversations, you can head to my YouTube channel, where you can listen to this conversation again, but you can also listen to many more amazing conversations I've had with some of the leaders in the tech and innovation space. So thank you very much. Have a lovely day, and I will speak to you soon. Thank you, Paul.